Welcome to this video where we will show you some ways to manage server, network, and IT racks in ServiceNow. As you use ServiceNow, you probably have seen and worked with the CMDB, the various classes and relationships. What we will focus on today are racks as set up in the CMDB CI rack table, along with the content and the two main relationships that go along with them, contains contained by and powers powered by, to represent content and power allocation of the equipment within the racks. When we talk about racks, we refer to the various sizes and styles of racks used to host network, server, and storage equipment. This can be a single rack in a closet or multiple racks in a room, all the way to hundreds of racks in a data center. While some organizations use expensive data center infrastructure management or DCIM tools, you can also do capacity planning and workflows directly in ServiceNow. This video will show you how to set up the CMDB to enable automated capacity aggregation for space and power and show rack elevation views directly in ServiceNow using the Tier44 Built On Now application available on the ServiceNow store. Let's start with what you already have in ServiceNow for managing racks, such as the list and form, workspace, dashboard, relationships, and dependency views, but there is nothing explicit for managing space and power capacity, which poses the question: do you currently manage space and power capacity for your server racks in ServiceNow? If so, how are you doing it? Let's look at some of the out-of-the-box views in ServiceNow. After you log in, you will see a home page like this where you have your main navigation, favorites, and ways to access the CMDB CI rack table. We are going to go into the rack list directly. You will see a complete list of racks in your data center. We can get more information by clicking on one to go into the rack form. This is the form for your specific rack you selected. You have fields at the top with details of your rack, but most importantly, the rack units it has, which is 42. There's another field called Rack Units in Use, which shows 41 units. That number is manually maintained by someone, which may or may not be accurate. Now remember those numbers for later, as they will be relevant. In the center, you have all of your relationships. You can see what the rack is contained by, which is the computer room, and what the rack contains, such as servers, network gear, storage devices, and PDUs. Now looking at this form, how do you know how much space and power in that rack is actually used? Let's take a look at the CMDB workspace. This is a basic screen that shows you a different look at your information, such as your configuration items in your database. It can be configured to show you information from the CMDB, but unless you have some other fields for power and space capacity, you won't be able to display them here. Another alternative is the dashboard view, also accessible from the rack form. The dashboard has a lot of widgets that will show you the current status of your data center if it is configured exactly how ServiceNow wants you to. If you do not, then you can create your own widgets which are not a part of their model or template to setting up your data center. The bottom provides more ways that can be configured to use to monitor tasks and changes, as well as a timeline. You can also view a relationship by clicking the icon to direct you to a form that shows the individual parent-child relationship with the type. We can close this and realize comparing the dashboard and the workspace, neither one displays the capacity of your rack, a graphical interface, or any calculations that you need to properly manage your data. So how do you know how much space and power do you have left? Do you rely on someone to maintain that number? Do you calculate it yourself on a spreadsheet? If you do, how accurate is it? Think about that while we go back to the form of the rack. If you want to get any kind of aggregations done in ServiceNow, the best way to do it is along a relationship tree. For space and power in racks, we recommend using two specific relationship types: contains contained by and powers powered by. They are available out of the box and can be used for any class at any level. This allows you to set up a rack that contains a server chassis, that contains a blade, but also upstream, a building contains a room, contains a rack. Using the same relationship type allows us to aggregate space and power from bottom to top automatically. The following dependency view shows how such a tree can look like. This is a top-down structure, meaning the data center is at the top and it spreads down to the computer room, rack, and equipment, which is at the very bottom. You can see the connection here is contains contained by, meaning the data center contains the computer room. You have the contains relationship again here because the computer room contains the rack. You want to be careful with relationship types. There are room contains and rack contains relationships as well. Do not use them. You want a single class independent relationship type for your tree for any automated aggregation to work. The same applies to power relationships, meaning the server is powered by a power strip, which is powered by a bus bar, and so on. Use a single relationship type again, power is powered by, for the power string from the building to the equipment. Having the structure right and having the details of equipment in ServiceNow and the relationships defined, there is one other piece still missing, a view of how that rack actually looks like along with the aggregation details for power and space. With the Tier44 application, you get that, a button at the top of the CMDB CI forms called Graphical View. This shows you a graphical view of your rack. At first glance, you can see exactly where your equipment is on the rack, a front and back view of the rack, as well as how much space and power you have used and have remaining. Now, if you remember the numbers before of the rack units on ServiceNow, it showed 42 units in capacity and 41 units in use. Here we can clearly see there is more than one unit available, so the data in ServiceNow, manually maintained, is not accurate. In ServiceNow, it is your responsibility to update the aggregations properly to see the correct information, and Tier44, you can see it and have it calculated for you. To get a replica picture of what you have, it gives a summary table of device information to the right and another tab for the interface to be able to see what is connected and where on the entire device. The red color coding shows the interfaces and that there is something currently connected in that spot. If we go back to the Summary tab, we can click the model name and it will bring you to the ServiceNow model table where all this information is stored along with more details. One extension is a Tier44 tab that shows the front and back image with the peak power, which is the amount of power that will be allocated for that device as part of the aggregation. The second extension is a Model Interfaces tab. This is another table we provide as part of the application, which gives you a way to specify the relationship type and see what the capabilities are. Now, to see if interfaces are available, you can have Tier44 do it for you automatically, or you can build the interface yourself using the Interface Builder. This is another extension provided by Tier44. You can draw your own interface on the device to show exactly where to plug in equipment, what kind of outlet it is, and if it is occupied, and so many more details. You can select one outlet and see further properties such as type, direction, and capacity. In another video, we will show you how you can use this application. We can go back to the model form by clicking the Model tab at the top. By clicking the configuration items on the model form, you get a list of all items that have the same configuration as the model you are currently looking at. You can click a CI in the list and look at that device, but now you are probably lost and not sure where you are. Instead of trying to figure it out, just click the graphical view and you are taken back to the image. Now, if you want to know where the device is located on the rack, you can click the Find Me button. This brings you back to the rack with the item you were just on blinking to clearly locate where you were. You can click the Find Me room and this takes you to the full computer room with all of the racks, again blinking to distinguish the location. A data center doesn't have to be huge with thousands of racks. Here at Tier44, we can support a data center that is one rack in a closet to a 5-story building with thousands of racks. We can click Find Me and see where the computer room is located in the data center, and click it one last time and this will take us to our global map dashboard. Here we have a map of the entire world with pins for where the data centers are located. No matter where in the world, it can be large data centers, a server closet, or a container, this map will show it. We can see the space and power information for every data center calculated for us at a glance. We can monitor the performance with the incident table on the right and have more details at our fingertips with the sustainability metric table on the left. An alternative way to access the data centers and computer rooms other than the map is by clicking the Rooms button. This brings up a table with all the capacity at once. You can then navigate to the data center or the room just by clicking the name. Another capability that is offered is the ability to check the available space and power of the entire room at once. With the space button, you can see that 2 of the racks are red, meaning they are completely full and there is not any space available. And by clicking the power button, you can see 5 of the racks do not have any more power available to use. What is unique in the computer room is that you can find out where you have the power and space available for a specific piece of equipment, just by entering numbers. For example, if you had something that was 6 RU high and 15,000 watts, you can enter that information and it will provide where there is availability to install that. As you can see here, the racks are now color-coded. Red means there is nothing available, yellow means it barely has enough, and green means it has plenty of space and power available. While Summary and Interface are default tabs out of the box, it's also easy to add your own tabs like the BU, which are business units in this example. This color codes the different divisions in the company to show who owns what rack. It can be color-coded accordingly and aggregate all the information based on the criteria you wish to see. You can add your own tab of any CMDB value you are interested in, and by doing so, you change the Tier 44 property definitions, which means there is not any code or application changes required. With the automated space and power aggregation provided by the Tier 44 application, there is a requirement for accurate relationships. As we use contains contained by for space aggregation and powers powered by for all the power aggregation, interfaces have to be specified as part of the relationship. To make this easy, we have created a relationship builder that lets you create the relationship and assign appropriate or available interfaces at the same time. Let's go to a rack and see how this works. On the parent side, we have our rack, and on the child side, I'm going to search for a server and disconnect it. This was at slot 25. We can go back to the graphical view and see that a server is missing immediately. If we look at the summary table, we can also see that the space and power were affected. There is more available now. Let's go back and reconnect this relationship into a new spot. We will search it again. Below, you can see the available interfaces on each side, and we will select a new one on the parent side and default on the child side. We can connect this relationship and go back to the rack view again to see the server reappear in the new slot. The space and power were also affected instantly. This is because Tier 44 is a built-on Now application that runs directly in ServiceNow. You should set up your CMDB with all of your racks, even if it's just a handful in a couple small rooms. You should also use contains contained by and powers powered by relationships independent of using Tier 44 or not to make sure your dependency views are accurate. When done, clone it down to one of your sub-production instances. Request a free trial from ServiceNow Store and see for yourself how the aggregation and visualization enhances your CMDB and the usability of the information in the CMDB. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more details and recommendations.